Hello and welcome back to the live webinar here at BINA. Today we will continue the discussion that we started on Monday about the place that alcohol consumption has in Judaism. So on Monday we discussed two sides of the coin. We mentioned that there are many important times within Judaism and within a Jew's life that things are done specifically over a cup of wine. Like, for example, Kiddush on Friday night and Shabbos day, Havdalah, which is also part of sanctifying Shabbat on Motzei Shabbos and Saturday night. When a bride and a groom get married, they do it over a cup of wine. Great milestones, very holy days are all done in the context and around a cup of wine. On the other hand, we brought various laws and various stories within Tanakh, within Jewish history, how terrible alcohol was and all the negative consequences that the over drinking, over consumption of alcohol had. For example, Noah after the flood, Adam and Eve ate from according to some opinions, from a vine, from a grape. That was the forbidden fruit. Lot and his daughters, etc., like we discussed on Monday. So we left off with the question, which one is it? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? And the truth is that the way God created the world is that there are many things that are not good or bad, it just depends how you use it. And on the contrary, things that are incredibly powerful, things that are very elevated and have the potential to be done in a very holy way, specifically those things can be used for the worst, for the most terrible things. Because they have such a power, because they are really in the potential, can be used in a very strong way, so it can go strong for the good or strong for the negative. For example, the idea of a relationship between a man and a woman is one of the most powerful things that can be done in the context and within the sanctity of marriage. That's the most powerful and elevated and holy thing. But it can also be the most destructive thing. This is another example. Alcohol consumption, and specifically wine, can be done in a very holy way and can bring a person closer to God and closer to that person's soul and to their inner being. But it can also be used for the most destructive things. It's a powerful force that can be used very powerfully for the good, but also very powerfully for the bad. So the answer is basically that it all depends in what context you use it. If a person drinks just in order to have fun and to go wild and to lose themselves, that can lead to terrible things and just very destructive things. But if a person drinks a little bit, obviously in moderation, drinks and says a little bit of l'chaim, drinks a little bit of wine, in order to get rid of their inhibitions, to sort of lose themselves a little bit and put themselves on the side, and in order to have the ability to discover their inner self and to reveal things that normally would not be revealed, that can be a very powerful thing. To explain this a little more, and how can drinking wine be a good thing? Within the context of a very bizarre, seemingly very bizarre story in the Talmud, actually regarding the holiday of Purim. The Talmud tells us that a person is obligated to drink on Purim until they do not know the difference between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. And that's a discussion in and of itself, what exactly that means. There are many commentaries that explain that statement. It doesn't mean literally. Various explanations, deep mystical explanations, what exactly that means. But the general idea is that a person has to drink on Purim a little bit more than they're used to. And in the continuation of this law, the Talmud brings a bizarre story. There were two sages. One, his name was Rabbah, and one, his name was Rab Zera. Two great sages in the Talmud. And they one year they were celebrating the Purim feast together. And they got intoxicated, they got drunk. And the Gemara tells us, the Talmud tells us, Kam Rabbah v'shachte l'Rab Zera. Rabbah gets up and he slaughters Rab Zera. If you translate that literally, he kills him. The next day, Rabbah gets up, he realizes what he's done, he turns to God and asks for mercy, and miracle, lo and behold, Rab Zera comes back to life. Well, if that wasn't bizarre enough, the story gets even more bizarre. The next year, Rabbah comes, he's sending out his invites for the Purim feast, and he includes Rab Zera in his invitation list. Rabbi Zera gets this invite and he tells him, not every year will a miracle happen. I'm scared about the results of this Purim feast. Didn't end very well last year. Who says we'll have the same miracle this year? Obviously, this story is not understood. If you know who Rabbi was a person who, it says about him that he did not stop learning Torah for a second, so much so that the angel of death didn't have power over him. He had to distract him from his learning in order to take his soul at the end of his life. Such a person should kill somebody as a result of drinking alcohol. It just seems totally bizarre and doesn't make any sense. Even after drinking, most normal people don't end up killing people. So obviously there's a deeper explanation here. On the other hand, we can't take the story out of its literal meaning, although there are many passages in the Gemara, in the Talmud, that are seemingly bizarre, and many of the commentaries explain that although they are true, because everything in Torah is true, but they are not to be taken literally, meaning they are true, but in a spiritual world. It happened in some sort of spiritual way, it means something spiritual, but not in a literal way in this world that it actually happened physically. So you could think to explain this story like that as well. The problem is that this story is brought as a continuation of a mitzvah, of a commandment to drink on Purim. To drink on Purim is not a spiritual concept. It's a commandment physically to drink more than one is used to on Purim. So this story, which is either a support for that or to say that maybe it's not such a good idea, because look what happened, but either way, it definitely is a literal story. Otherwise, why would it come in continuation of a mitzvah, of a commandment, which is obviously literal? So I'll share with you a fascinating explanation from the Lubavitcher Rebbe that he once gave on Purim. And this is based on a Shaloh. The Shaloh HaKadosh was a great sage who explains the following. We know a rule. The rule is that nichnas yayin yotza soid. When a person drinks wine or any alcohol, all the secrets come out. We find that a person's tongue is looser, they speak more freely. You find out things about people after they drink that you wouldn't have found out if they wouldn't have drank. Now, it depends what a person's secrets are. If a person deep down is just full of nonsense, or even worse, then that will come out when they drink. But if you have a very righteous person, what is their secrets? Their secrets are deep secrets of the Torah, deep mystical thought that generally is subconscious and doesn't come revealed. When they drink, what comes out is actually deep Torah thoughts, deep mystical concepts, deep godly revelations that are deep down in their soul that needed something to bring it out and was brought out by alcohol, by drinking wine. So he explains like this. That is exactly what happened at this Purim feast. It is literal. They got drunk. But when you have two sages like Rabbi and Rabbi Zera getting drunk, the guaranteed there was no nonsense at the table. No one got wild, nobody did things which they would regret later. All that came out was their deep secrets. What was their deep secrets? Their deep secrets were deep mystical thoughts, deep godly revelations coming out of their soul as a result of them drinking. The problem was like this. If you look at the names of these two people, you'll get to know something about them. The name Rabba means great. The name Zera in Aramaic actually means small. Relative to the greatness of Rabba, Rab Zera was small. He was not on the same spiritual level as Rabba. Yeah, relative to people like me, Rab Zera was obviously an incredibly great person, someone from a totally different world in a different league, but relative to Rabba, he wasn't as great. Now, when a person experiences a spiritual revelation, it has to be in a way that they can handle it. You have some stories in some cases when people had some deep spiritual revelation, and since they weren't refined enough, their body is not a vessel, cannot contain such a great revelation. What actually happens is that the soul expires from the body. The body can't handle this revelation, and the soul just leaves the body. For example, in this week's Torah portion, we learn that the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, when they heard God's voice, it was such a great revelation, their soul just left their body. And that is what happened over here. Both were sharing the secrets of the Torah. Both were sharing what was deep down in their soul, some deep godly concept. But Rabbah was much greater than Rab Zera, and the mystical teachings that Rabbi was teaching was too much for Rab Zera to handle, and his soul literally left his body as a result of that. So he did pass away, but Rabbi didn't kill him, obviously. Rabbi shared deep secrets of the Torah, and as a result of that, Rab Zera's soul expired from his body. And that can actually be seen in the words that the Talmud describes the story. It doesn't say that Rabbi killed him. It says Rabbi shochte l'Rab Zera, which shochte means shchita, which means to slaughter. Why is slaughtering an animal, for example, called shchita in Hebrew? The Talmud explains in other places. The word v'shachat, to slaughter, means umoshach, means to pull back. Literally what that means is, without getting too graphic here, slaughtering an animal can't be a way that it's just one hit with the knife. It has to be a way that the knife slides back and forth. In other words, you pull the knife back. That can also mean to elevate, to pull up. And that's also when you slaughter an animal, what you're actually doing is you're elevating the animal from just being an animal to be able to be consumed by humans and by Jews, especially when you talk about slaughtering, and then it can be elevated and be used for godly purpose. So the word shchita, besides meaning slaughtering, can also mean to elevate. Rabba got up and he elevated Rab Zera. He elevated him to such a level that he couldn't handle it, and his soul expired from his body. A year passed by. Rabba now thinks to himself, a whole year passed by. Rab Zera obviously used this year to elevate himself spiritually and to advance in his service to God. Maybe this year he can handle it. Maybe this year his body is more refined and he will be able to handle the deep secrets of the Torah, which are revealed when Rabba drinks. However, Rab Zera sent back that just like I was elevated, you were also elevated, and everything's relative. It's just like I was elevated this past year, you have also been, and therefore I again will not be able to handle this, and maybe it's not such a good idea. We see from this story a powerful thing. The idea of alcohol, the idea of drinking wine especially, can be used for amazing purposes. For example, Purim, which maybe we'll get into more detail about Purim specifically, but just in a general sense. When a person goes into Purim, learning about Purim before, understanding why Purim is such a powerful day, and why there is a commandment to drink. And a person says, obviously, again, in moderation, in a way that doesn't damage their health, obviously. But a person says a little bit of l'chaim, takes a little bit of a drink, and through that, is able to put his body on the side and able to express their soul and express these ideas that they've learned and internalize it and live it, that's an unbelievable thing. But if a person goes into such a day with nothing, and all that happens is nonsense comes out of them, then obviously that's worthless.